Hi, I'm Douglas Saylor. In this short talk, I'll show why a perfectly normal RAG system can still give wrong but traceable answers on multi-hop questions, and how GraphRAG fixes that with a small knowledge graph under the hood. We'll start with the baseline RAG pipeline most teams enjoy today, see where it fails on a benefits coverage question. Then I'll show how modeling the domain as a graph of diagnoses, procedures, plans, and clauses fixes that failure without changing the LLM at all. Now, as I said, I'm using a benefits example here, but the same pattern shows up in supply chains, contracts, product catalogs, anywhere you're really asking about relationships, not just matching text. Here's the baseline RAG setup. We start with our benefits documents, policies, coverage tables, exclusions. We chunk them up into smaller pieces, turn each chunk into an embedding vector, store those vectors in a vector index, and for each question, we use a retriever to pull back the top K most similar chunks and pass them to an LLM for the answer. Our member asks, is procedure XYZ covered for diagnosis A under plan goal? The retriever finds three chunks that look relevant by cosine similarity. One says plan gold covers procedure XYZ for most conditions. Another says procedure XYZ is commonly used to treat diagnosis A. And there's an exception clause that says plan gold does not cover procedure XYZ for diagnosis A. Only the first two make it into the top K. You can see they're green here. The exclusion clause doesn't score quite as highly, so it's not retrieved. So the model only sees chunks saying plan gold covers the procedure and this procedure treats diagnosis A. Based on that, it confidently answers, yes, you're covered. The problem isn't that the model is dumb or hallucinating. Every sentence is traceable to real chunks. It simply never saw the exception clause. Baseline RAG missed the relationship chain that matters. GraphRAG fixes exactly this kind of failure by modeling those relationships explicitly. For questions of coverage like this, the data really lives as a graph. We have diagnoses, which can be treated with certain procedures. Those procedures are covered by specific plans, and each plan has clauses that restrict that coverage. For example, exclusions for particular diagnoses. In GraphRAG, we extract these entities and relationships and store them as nodes and edges instead of pretending everything is just flat text chunks. The raw text is still there, attached to nodes and clauses, but now we can actually walk the chain: diagnosis, procedure, plan, clause, when we answer a question. Let's see how this works for our same question. In the GraphRAG version, ingestion does a bit more work. We still chunk the documents, but we also extract diagnoses, procedures, plans, and clauses. Those get stored as a graph, this icon, and we keep a vector index so we can still use embeddings to find relevant nodes and text. The retrieval step changes as well. We still embed the question, but instead of jumping straight to chunks, we use that embedding to find seed nodes in the graph. Diagnosis A, procedure XYZ, plan goal, using the vector index. Then we walk the pre-built edges in the graph to pull in the connected procedures, plans, and clauses. For our question, diagnosis A links to its procedures. Procedure XYZ links to any plans that cover it and the clauses that restrict that coverage. This transversal picks up the plan gold node and the specific clause saying plan gold does not cover procedure XYZ for diagnosis A. We then pull the text attached to just that subgraph, the diagnosis, procedure, plan, and clause, and feed it to the LLM as context. Now the model sees both the general coverage and the exception and can answer, plan gold generally covers procedure XYZ, but not when it's associated with diagnosis A. So in your case, it's not covered. Same model, different result. We didn't change the LLM at all. GraphRAG just performs complete retrieval and gives us an end-to-end graph traced back through the diagnosis procedure, plan, and clause. So to wrap up, first, notice we never touched the LLM. We kept the same model and changed how we ingest the retrieve information. We added a graph building step in ingestion and graph-aware retrieval at query time. Second, that baseline RAG pipeline is still fine for simple lookup questions, but it can easily drop one leg of a multi-hop chain like our coverage exception. Third, GraphRAG fixes that by explicitly modeling diagnoses, procedures, plans, and clauses as a graph, then using graph-aware retrieval so the model sees the entire chain and we get a traceable answer. That's what people mean by GraphRAG. It's why this pattern is so useful in relationship-heavy domains, benefits, insurance, contracts, product catalogs, anywhere you have multi-hop questions over connected entities. In short, most RAG hallucinations aren't model problems, they're retrieval problems. You didn't give the model the right chain of facts. That's the core idea behind GraphRAG for multi-hop questions. Thanks for watching.